Vladimir Putin's war in Ukraine keeps spilling over into Russian territory. Officials in Russia now blaming Ukraine for drone attacks and shelling in several regions today, and that includes the map there you can see highlighted.
Rescuers are continuing their search of the coast of Greece for victims of a boat that has claimed the lives of at least 79 migrants. Hundreds are thought to have been on board this ship, which is...
For a long time, Sweden has been known as one of the EU's most economically stable members. Now, according to the European Commission, it's the only member state forecasted to go into recession this year, with inflation reaching record highs of 11.7%.
Right, well, let's bring you some breaking news now. And the climate researchers from the UN have warned that it's now considerably more likely than not that global warming will breach the key 1.5-degree limit.
Everything feels so pointless. I don't want to hang out with my friends anymore. I want to spend as much time as possible with my mom. All I can think about is war and the climate crisis.
We had a good life before we had to escape. I had 5 siblings and a mom. Now they're all dead. Maybe my dad too.
I feel so alone and sad all the time. I need help.
I'm worried that my family can't cope financially. My anxiety makes me want to end my life rather than see my loved ones live a life where you can barely afford food. If I weren't around, there will be one less person they have to pay for. I have panic attacks. I want to kill myself. Why should I even exist?
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this event under the title of Responding to Children in Crisis, an event that we have been working to organize, we at the Smile of the Child here in Greece, together with Bris, our partners in Sweden, and with the support of Child Helpline International and the kind support of the Swedish Embassy in Athens. We've been working to prepare this for many, many months on the very important topic of responding to children in crisis. We're very happy to have so many of you here today with us. We're very honored to have almost 40 countries represented at this event, both on site here in Athens, but also online. Apart from you here today that I see in front of me, we also have more than 500 people joining us online today. So a warm welcome to Athens, a warm welcome to our event. We look forward to having this exchange with you the next few days. Because we're delayed for a few minutes already, I'll be very short and I'll delve into the welcoming addresses immediately. So we will begin our session with a few short welcoming addresses from the organizing institutions. So first I would like to call to the stand Mr. Costas Yannopoulos, the President of the Board of Directors of the Smile of the Child.
Good morning. How nice to get together, to join forces. Yes? And to join forces for the children. Do they have voices? I don't think so. So welcome to our headquarters, Smile of the Child, that was founded 28 years ago by my son Andreas. And I'm very honored to represent him here today. He was only 10 years old and he had the idea of making an organization that he called it the Smile of the Child. We say it in a wrong English because in Greek emphasizes in the smile of the child, specifically one child. And Andreas, in his last page of his diary, he gave me an order. That order passed through the society of Greece that have good people around the civil society, the government institutions. There are always people, individuals, or, okay, they might not be as organized as it should be, but you can always find very important people to make the work feasible. So we're talking about responding to children in crisis. And crisis like a war. We have this huge problem in Ukraine. We have so many other crises all around. But don't forget, we have crisis now with the climate problem. And who are affected mostly are the children. Right now that we're talking, big, huge floods around Greece and around Europe and around the world. But we don't see immediately the children that have been affected. For example, when we go as an organization to support government institutions for problems like the fires, we had huge wildfires, and we go and visit the families because the government, because we are the first responders and see what the problem is regarding housing, regarding everyday work. We see the problem as it is, and we don't see the problem that has become within the heart and the soul of the little boy or girl that's been affected by this. So when we visit and talk to the children, we realize the effect that this crisis has on their future life. So we have to work together. At the same time, I would like to thank PE did it already, our very good collaboration with Bris. So many years. I've been in Sweden quite a few times. We had a very successful events with the Queen, you know how important, and everything. And under the umbrella of CHI, the biggest and the most important network in the world. Happy birthday, CHI. 20 years. And we should, as members, we should strengthen these networks. We, as a Smile of the Child, one of the first members of its foundation. But we won't forget Giroud, yes? Giroud, that he was the first power within the CHI, and she still is, but now so many people are working around it. And of course, I should always mention the importance and the collaboration with the Swedish Embassy for a very long time. We had quite a few events, apart from the events, collaboration with people from Sweden, like the municipality of Stockholm. We had an exchange of knowledge, we have exchange of practices, and how the municipality works in Sweden, and we wanted to transfer this knowledge within our municipalities with the refugee crisis and everything else. And we have the very important collaboration with IOM, about, since I mentioned, and Mr. Rocco is honored us to be here, and with the American Embassy, and so on. I don't there's so many people and so many participations. And we shouldn't forget the people that they see us, although it's a little bit cold to be outside of here. Here it's warm. But it's important that we share all this information, and from tomorrow, we should find ways of enforcing ourselves, to strengthen ourselves, to be by the side of the children all over the world. And we shouldn't forget that 116-111, it was the idea of some of us, and 116-000, which is the European missing children number, also the 111 is also the 111 at the same time. It's a helpline for children, and it was the idea that started through these meetings, and now the children have a voice, and the helplines are working very, very, very strongly and collaborating. When the war in Ukraine, we got together, CHI, MCE, and trying to support the problem of the helpline there. And welcome the representative from Ukraine, that we would continue to support you, and through you, the people from Ukraine, particularly the mothers and the children. I don't want to take the time, but I must say that I'm very honored here. We are with some members of the board of the Smile of the Child, and they wish you all the best. And I'll leave it here and wish that this meeting in Athens will leave something that we have to work on from tomorrow. This is important. Let's call it something in Athens. If we, after the meetings and everything, and then we'll be honored to name it because of this meeting. And thank you for the good collaboration. All the best, and we'll continue later, and we'll have the discussions together. Okay.
Thank you to Mr. Yannopoulos. And now I'd like to call to the stand Magnus Jägerskog, who's the Secretary General of Bris.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Your Excellencies, helpline staff and member, I think it's a true privilege to be able to welcome you to today's meeting, both all of you who are attending here in Athens and all of you who are joining us online. In September 2022, a year ago, Child Helpline International and Bris hosted an event in Stockholm, a global summit for all helplines worldwide. And the reason behind the meeting was the previous years of different crises, including the pandemic and the lockdown from COVID-19 and Russia's attack war on Ukraine. And what has been really clear during these crises is that we see the importance of helping and supporting children in different ways. And therefore, by meeting together, sharing experience, learning from each other as helplines, it's a great privilege, but also it's really important and crucial to be able to develop new ways to work, to learn from each other. And once again, we are able to meet and learn, listen to each other, both from helplines, but also, of course, from other organizations, governments, researchers, share knowledge on how to respond in the best possible way to children in crisis. And to all familiar faces and new ones, I want to wish you a warm welcome. Child helplines play a vital and crucial, important role in responding to children in crisis. We have seen in several crises a huge increase in contacts from children to our helplines globally in different circumstances. And one example on this, which is newly, is in Ukraine and Strada. During the war, the Ukrainian helpline has received 3 times the amounts of contacts with children in relation to a normal year for Strada. And I think responding to children in crisis is a responsibility that we have as adults. And as child helplines, we try to do that when it comes to responding and supporting children in whatever possible way that we can. Child helplines have a crucial function to meet and respond to children when a crisis occurs in the child's context. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. I will not mention all of them, but one of them is that children doesn't speak to many adults about their situation, but they do it to us as helplines. And that gives us an opportunity to listen, to hear what they are telling, and also to get set actions in place in order to respond and change the situation for the child. Today, various crises are taking place simultaneously. Wars, inflation was mentioned, climate-related crises such as floods, fires, they're going on right now. And I think we can only provide an adequate support and response to children in those crises if we do it jointly together, as being mentioned here earlier. And together with you who work for other organizations, for governments, from corporations, I think we can do more if we would collaborate even more in the future. And I think that is our responsibility as adults to do so. We have gathered to share experiences and learn from expertise, as well as to find new ways to support children together. And I really hope that you will find this meeting fruitful. And when you leave this room, both here on site in Athens and online, that you will bring new ideas with you back to your work, both I think as an individual, but also to your workplace and the work that you are doing on a daily basis, to how we can do more together to respond to children in crisis. I would also like to take the opportunity to really thank Smile of the Child for having us here today. Your team they are fantastic, and the competence that lies within this organization and the dedication to work for a better future and better today for children is really, really strong. And I also want to thank my team from Bris for all the work that you have put into this event as well. And to all of you who are joining us today online, warm welcome and thank you for taking this time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Magnus. And now we'd like to call to the stand His Excellency, the Ambassador of Sweden, Johan Borgstam.
So, good morning. President Yannopoulos, Secretary General Magnus Jägerskog from Bris in Sweden, dear organizers, a big Swedish-Greek syncharitia already now. It's quite an amazing number of participants and actors that you've managed to gather here today. Also, of course, particularly happy that we will be joined online by the Swedish Minister for Social Services, Camilla Waltersson. Happy to see old friends going back a couple of years, such as Sweden's Ombudsman for Children, Elizabeth Dalle, making it into the meeting despite ongoing climatic challenges. I think we should also be very grateful for the presence of Maria Clara Martin, the representative of UNHCR, as well as IOM's Chief of Mission, Gianluca Rocco, also two great friends of the Embassy of Sweden in Athens. Let me say that I've been now in Greece representing Sweden for 2 years, but I know that I stepped into a long tradition of collaboration between the embassy, as the President noted, between the embassy and Smile of the Child. And as examples of what we have done in the past, and maybe ideas on what to repeat or elaborate on in the future, in 2014, Greece and Sweden and Smile of the Child, together with the embassy, as you will remember, President shared best practices against bullying and school violence. Sadly, very topical subjects right now. And also at an international conference on child sexual abuse in 2019, the embassy also facilitated the participation of experts from the University of Linköping. And again, to President Yannopoulos, the impact that Smile of the Child has had in Greek society is very well known, and not just in Greece. And it's also been proven amply by statistics. So the impact is there, it's tangible, you're literally saving lives of children. So I want to assure you, President, that the collaboration and the support between the Embassy of Sweden, it was already there, it will endure. We hope to make it even stronger, to reinforce it even more. And then, of course, a big happy birthday to Child Helpline International. So, dear friends, with those few brief remarks, just like all of us gathered here, I very much look forward to the proceedings of this important event. Thank you very much. Σας ευχαριστούμε.
Thank you very much to His Excellency the Ambassador. Now we will move to the next section, which are short addresses. Our Minister for Social Cohesion and the Family, unfortunately, will not join us as she has just been called to an emergency ministerial meeting to discuss the floods. So as we were saying with our colleagues at Bris just a little while ago, it's pertinent, the timing, to what we're discussing here today, as we're discussing how to respond to crises, and we are facing a crisis as we speak here today in our country, a weather-related crisis. So we are very honored to have online the Swedish minister. I already see her on the screen, Camilla Waltersson Grönvall, forgive my pronunciation. We're very honored to have you online. We hope that you can hear us well. Okay, and we all see you well. I can. Super. So I will now give you the floor. Thank you very much. You have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. I'm sad to hear that the minister isn't able to join us here today, and I wish for all the best in this very time of crisis and serious situation. Well, thank you for the opportunity and the invitation to speak for you here today. My name is Camilla Waltersson Grönvall, and I am Minister for Social Services in the Swedish government. My responsibilities include children's rights policy, and today I am going to address some of those important challenges in this area that Sweden faces today. A child rights perspective should infuse all work for and with children. And in doing so, we will ensure that all children have equal opportunities for participation and influence in the society. All children should be given a genuine chance to thrive in life. In the coming years, the government will, among other important things, prioritize the work to improve the mental health of children and young people, protect children from being exposed to all forms of violence, improve the living conditions for children in social, child, and youth care, as well as to prevent children from being recruited into and exploited in criminal contexts. Combating all forms of violence against children is a major focus for the government. An inquiry has submitted a proposal for a new 10-year national strategy to prevent and combat violence against children. The government has decided on a national health program for children and young people. School-based health care services should be strengthened and made available in every school. A new national strategy for mental health and suicide have been presented. The government will improve the protection of children and alternative care and in institutions. An inquiry has been tasked with reviewing and proposing measures to improve the quality of care for children and young people in foster homes, supported housing, residential care home, and special youth detention centers. In the work to strengthen the rights of the child, support for parents and support to the whole civil society will be important tools. Children's and young people's own experiences and opinions must be taken into account in all investments concerning children. In the work to ensure that the children's rights have an impact, the involvement of civil society organizations is completely central. The government conducts a systematic dialogue with children's rights organizations within the framework of the Child Rights Delegation and is aware of how important the organization's work is for children in vulnerable situations. The government is also aware of the importance of continuous support for civil society organizations to be able to conduct activities with quality where children do not end up outside. The government therefore have decided on a new permanent funding of 1.7 million euros yearly from 2023 for Bris National Helpline for Children and 1.7 million euros extra to children's rights organizations. And I am, of course, especially proud that Bris has a special helpline for Ukrainian children and adults. The government intends to continue participating in the work to strengthen the protection of the rights of the child at an international level. In responding to adverse childhood experiences, we need to further develop services based on an in-depth understanding on how trauma works. Due to devastating consequences of Russia's illegal aggression against Ukraine, we may find Ukrainian children and youth among those in need of trauma-informed care in Sweden. For obvious reasons, the capacity to deliver such care must also be built in Ukraine. As part of Sweden's broader partnership with Ukraine, I have signed an agreement with the Ukrainian Minister of Social Policy, Ms. Oksana Shulnovich, committing our ministries to long-term collaboration in the field of child protection and social policy. The Swedish government has commissioned the National Competence Center on Violence Against Children, Barna Fri, to assist the Ukrainian authorities in training social workers and other child protection professionals on trauma-informed services for children and youth. Thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you today. I look forward to further discussions in the future, and I wish for you to have fruitful discussions and new increased energy to further strengthen our common work to further build child protection systems. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the Minister for her very interesting and informative intervention. As we need a couple of moments to be able to connect with our next online speaker, I'll take the opportunity to just briefly present the format of this event today. So this morning, 10 to 12, we have this hybrid event, which is both on site and online, and has the first initial addresses and then a short panel discussion with keynote speakers, and also 2 keynote speeches that you will watch online and video recorded in a few moments. Then we will take a break. We will continue with an on-site only roundtable discussion where we will have more in-depth analysis of the issues discussed, and then later on in the afternoon and tomorrow during the day, we will have an on-site only meeting of the helplines that come from the European region and some from outside of Europe, the members of CHI. So I'm happy to see that we are able to connect with our next online speaker. So I would like to welcome Mr. Benjamin Dalle. He's a Flemish minister of Brussels, responsible for youth, media, and I I'm afraid I don't have his full title here in front of me right now, so apologies. Minister Dalle, if you can please briefly say your full title, and I give you the floor. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I'm Benjamin Dalle. I'm Flemish Minister of Belgium, responsible for capital city Brussels, youth policy, which includes children's rights, media and poverty reduction. So thank you very much for having me here, and good day to everybody over there in Athens and all across Europe and some elsewhere. I am very grateful for this event to be organized by you and to have the opportunity to speak here. At the end of February 2022, war broke out in Ukraine, and it was an unprecedented situation. 14 million Ukrainian people had to flee from their homes, and according to UNICEF, this includes 3 million children who are fleeing. 2 million have fled to places outside of Ukraine, and 1 million of them are so-called IDPs, internally displaced persons. But apart from Ukrainian children, there are of course many others fleeing outside of their country, minors fleeing worldwide. UNICEF reported in June of this year that never before in human history so many children had to flee from their homes. To be quite precise, 43.3 million young people and children. That number has doubled in 10 years, UNICEF reported, warning that help for these children is severely strained by the alarming rate of increase. Governments need to do more to resolve conflicts and to care for refugee children. Children on the run are often among the most vulnerable. Many lack access to education and healthcare, miss routine vaccinations, and cannot claim social protection. Almost all countries in the world have ratified the UN Convention on the Right of the Child. This means they take on the obligation and the commitment to ensure that children have access to education, care, and protection. The right to participation is also anchored in this convention. We have to ensure that they can express their voice in all kinds of ways and platforms. In Belgium, we provided temporary protection to almost 73,000 Ukrainians, 23,500 of whom were minors, 23,500. As the Flemish Youth Minister, in addition to the initial concerns of reception, housing, work and education, I immediately considered the place, talent and interests of each individual child by investing in 3 pillars, amongst others, the care for leisure and free time, information tailored to young people, and thirdly, and I would like to talk about that, our listening line or helpline, which is called AWEL in our country, which in the short term developed a separate AWEL chat for children and young people fleeing Ukraine. Children and teenagers could chat in Ukrainian or in Russian with volunteers. All of these volunteers, often themselves recent refugees from Ukraine, had received good basic training from AWEL and received continuous expert support. I can also mention here that AWEL has drafted a comprehensive report on the way in which this was done. They have done it in Dutch and it was also translated in English, and we are very happy to provide it to those of you who are interested in the experience of AWEL, which is relevant as well to what they have done as to the proposal I will present to you in a short term. This way, the Ukrainian children and teenagers here also get the chance to participate in activities and get the support that is also offered to children living here in Belgium. The intention was to make the young people feel that they are welcome here, that they can take part in youth activities just as much, and that if they needed a listening ear, if they were struggling with something, they could contact someone. The war in their homeland does not have to put their lives on pause. But this initiative, once again, and I know that many other countries like also Greece have taken similar initiatives, but this initiative once again makes it clear that there is an urgent need for a central helpline for children. Not just for Ukrainian children. Whether children are fleeing from Ukraine, from Afghanistan, or from Sudan, they should all have access to a listening line. We are sitting here together with so much expertise around the table. All of the big and important names in this sector are present. I would therefore like to launch this bold idea, bold proposal, and for this I'm looking primarily to the experts present here, such as Child Helpline International, UNICEF and UNHCR. Let us build an international service, a helpline for all children and young people, especially those who are refugees or IDPs. I think 20 years ago this proposal would have been utopian. Today, I think this is very realistic and it is an obligation for all of us. Why has it become very realistic? Because of the introduction of smartphones and the introduction of 4 and 5G. In many places of the world, also in the most difficult countries, young people have access to Wi-Fi, to 4G, to 5G, and there are possibilities to chat internationally with our helplines. Therefore, I think it is quite a crucial and the correct moment to propose this and to implement this as soon as possible. We have volunteers across the globe who are willing to help us with this in their original language. In this case, it was primarily Ukrainian and Russian, but all of the countries, of course, are concerned. All of the languages in the world are concerned. I think this is possible to do it area-wide and easily accessible. If you do it, and for this the report of AWEL will be very useful as well, we should have, of course, respect for language and cultural differences and for cultural sensitivity. Every child on the run needs a listening ear. It is stressed and it is impacted by his or her situation. We are, of course, more than available to share our experiences and this comprehensive report of AWEL. And we invite everyone to sit down with us to develop an international listening line, an international helpline for children on the run. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Minister Dalle. It's very nice to hear the ministers referring to the helplines and to the members of CHI and to the importance of their work, so thank you very much. And as I said earlier, we will continue later today and tomorrow meeting as helplines only, so we will discuss also your proposals and ideas that you shared with us today, so thank you very much. This concludes this part of the agenda, which are the short addresses. And now we're going to move into the second part, which are the keynote addresses. As you've noticed in your agendas, we have two such addresses. The first one will be shown, it's a video recorded, and the second will be live online. So you will watch them here for those of you who are in this hall. The first one is a presentation by Chris Newlin. Chris Newlin is the Executive Director of the National Children's Advocacy Center in the US, and he's responsible at the NCAC for providing leadership and management and participating in national and international training and leadership activities regarding the protection of children. For those of you who have joined us live, in your folders you have fuller bios for all our speakers, so you can review them. The NCAC is a key partner of the Smile of the Child. We have a memorandum of understanding and we work very closely with them. It's a great honor for us that Chris recorded his address for you, and I hope you enjoy it. The topic of his address is critical incident first aid, because what we're discussing here today is both the support that we provide to those who reach out to us, but also the support we provide to ourselves. So to the staff and the professionals of all the helplines and organizations that are providing support to the children and others who call us. That's also very important. So Chris will speak about that. And if we are ready, we can delve into listening to his presentation. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Newlin, and I'm the Executive Director at the National Children's Advocacy Center, which is located in Huntsville, Alabama. I'm sorry I couldn't be with you in person or be presenting live, but my days of staying up late, I think it would be about 1 a.m. my time, my bazooki days are long gone. So hopefully this recorded message will be beneficial and impactful. I appreciate the long-standing collaboration that we've had with the Smile of the Child and not just on a professional level, but also the personal relationship that we've been able to develop over the years. So thank you for inviting me to speak today and to be part of the conference of folks all over Europe who are working with helplines. I greatly respect the work that you do, and I know you're right on the forefront of people who are in crisis reaching out, seeking your help. So thank you for doing that for children throughout Europe. At the National Children's Advocacy Center, we coordinate the multidisciplinary response to child abuse, which includes all comprehensive services necessary when there's an allegation of abuse, and coordinating those with our law enforcement and child protective services and medical and mental health professionals, so that it's done in the best manner possible and make sure that children get all the services they need, and that we're able to help hold those who harm children accountable. So today, though, I'm going to be talking about a different topic, and that is critical incident first aid. So you'll say, what is that? We'll get to that shortly, but I'm going to start to share my screen so that you can see a PowerPoint that I'll walk through today. And I'm sorry I won't be able to take questions and answers at the end, since I would be sleeping when you're watching this, but I will be available if someone does have a question or there's some follow-up. Contacts through the Smile of the Child is a great way to connect, and I'll be happy to try to do whatever I can to provide additional information. So when I'm talking about critical incident first aid, this is something new that we have developed, and it is really intended to be for an organization that is responding to a significant critical incident which has occurred. But before I start talking about critical incident first aid, here's just a little bit of background about the NCAC, the services that we provide, and our location in North Alabama, where we have co-location with our multidisciplinary partners, and the services that we provide are listed here. And today what I want to talk about is first recognizing the impact of working in high trauma exposure environments, review the multi-level response necessary to address individuals who are support individuals working in those environments, and then I'm going to briefly review the critical incident first aid model as developed for children's advocacy centers earlier this year. So just generally around secondary trauma, I know that all of you who are watching this work in a very challenging environment where you hear difficult stories on a very regular basis. And similar to those of us working in children's advocacy centers, we and our partners and our co-workers and our colleagues and we as organizations, we have that exposure. Like, that exposure is something we can't avoid. It is the work that we do. So we can't control that. And in some situations, we have reactions to that, you know, and those reactions can be relatively mild, or they can maybe be more significant as we respond to these things that we're exposed to on a regular basis. If that progresses, we then may develop some types of symptoms, somewhat similar to post-traumatic stress disorder, that start to, you know, impact us, and we're experiencing some of those symptoms, and you know, maybe that varies and it waxes and wanes, but it is an issue that we may experience for some individuals, and then some individuals may have so many symptoms that they actually start to, you know, experience functional impairment, you know, where they're just not able to function in doing this work. They're no longer effective. We sometimes previously talked about, well, so this individual is burned out. They've been doing this too long. Sometimes what we're actually talking about is they have functional impairment due to what they've been exposed to and lack of supports for that. And that's part of the reason and rationale for developing comprehensive responses to secondary traumatic stress, because secondary traumatic stress is inevitably intertwined when critical incidents happen. And there are a tremendous number of areas where we have exposure. It's how we think, it's how we feel, it's how we behave, it's our spirituality, it's our interpersonal interactions, it's how our body is. There's so many different actions, you know, how we perform our job, the status of our morale, how we engage with others, our behavior, that are all these things can be impacted by exposure to trauma, and then if for individuals that are experiencing more functional impairment. Now, the purpose of today's talk is not to necessarily address secondary traumatic stress, but we have to plant this as the foundation for the presentation that I am doing. And I do want to acknowledge just briefly that an effective secondary traumatic stress response does not just mean that I need to do better. I need to take better care of myself. I need to eat better. I need to exercise more. I need to sleep more, or any of those things. That is part of it. But there also is the responsibility for supervisors to provide trauma-informed supervision in a meaningful way, and for there to be organizational practices and policies that support employees who are regularly being exposed to secondary traumatic stress. From my perspective, I don't work in a helpline, but I can just imagine how challenging it is for many of you as you're working in a helpline and you're on the phone with someone who's clearly in distress. And if that person says, I gotta go, or just hangs up, or you lose connection, I can imagine how that feels. That has to be a very powerless feeling, and you might worry about that. So I can just imagine that secondary traumatic stress is something that you all are also, experiencing at times based on what you're exposed to. So I want to honor that, and I want to normalize that if you've ever had some of those feelings, it's not that there's something wrong with you. It just means you're human. And there's humanity inside of you that is that is responding to what you're being exposed to. So before I talk about critical incident first aid, what is a critical incident? A critical incident, as we define it, is an event that produces or is likely to produce an unusual level of stress, trauma exposure, or emotional strain on multiple staff members. This could be losing a client passes away, a coworker passes away. It could be an act of violence in the workplace. It could be a particularly terrible case that a number of you were involved in and working together. It could be a natural disaster striking an area where you are. Those are different kinds of critical incidents that may happen and that directly have an impact on multiple people working in an organization that is already responding to the needs of those who have experienced trauma. And it is a little bit more challenging. We developed this specifically for children's advocacy centers because we know that individuals working in children's advocacy centers are seeing terrible cases day in and day out. They are emotionally engaged with these children and families. We're seeing them over time in therapy. So we're having that ongoing contact with them. We see their ups and downs, or the lows. We see their disappointments when things happen. So we are being exposed to that. And if then there is a critical incident that happens, we have multiple people that are typically involved. And that's why it was critical that we do this. I'm going to be talking about an overview of concepts and practices when there is a critical incident. This is, again, first aid. So when you think about first aid, this is not therapy, it's not debriefing, it's not long-term necessary. This is first aid, like what you do right after there is a critical incident. And having a plan is always better than just not having a plan and just trying to respond, in the spur of the moment. Think about all of us with COVID, how we tried to respond without really having a clear plan. It was challenging. Critical incident first aid is intended as a much, much better process than a long used practice of what's called critical incident debriefing. Essentially, in critical incident debriefing, people who were involved in something were forced to come together in a very short time frame after the incident happened. They were forced to talk about what happened and be very open and vulnerable in front of other people. And the research has been pretty strong that this is, not only is it not helpful, or likely not helpful for many people, it actually can be harmful about forcing someone to talk about something when they're not fully prepared to do so. So we want to offer this as an alternative for what has often been used, which is this critical incident debriefing. Now, the critical incident first aid is built on the concepts that were founded with psychological first aid. Psychological first aid was really developed by the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, but there's history of psychological first aid dating back to shortly after World War II that some of these tenets have been talked about. So this is about how do you respond to someone when they are in a psychological or psychiatric crisis, when you're trying to apply first aid after something's happened. Maybe they're in a terrible car wreck and somebody, their loved one has been killed in this wreck, and you're responding and they're in an emotional state, right? So how in those, there's a disaster, there's something terrible that happens, how do we respond to those individuals? We took those same concepts and then we then applied them into an organizational setting so that organizations could provide the support necessary for staff who have experienced a critical incident. So why do we do this? Number one, debriefing approaches are not the best practice after a critical incident. And the critical incident first aid, it really differs in some really important ways from debriefing. But the most important factor is that if we want to have the most impactful process for addressing the needs of our staff after a critical incident, it's the support that those staff members receive from their supervisor and other leaders and their peers after this incident happened. So if we know that it's most important that they have that support, we need to have a plan for how that support is developed and provided to those individuals who have experienced a critical incident. So there are multiple different principles here. Again, I said that the critical incident first aid is based on the whole core actions of psychological first aid. That being, the first is just contact and engagement, being able to connect with someone, being able to engage with them, and then making sure they know you're here. Hey, I'm here, I've got you. Then ensuring their safety, their immediate safety, and their comfort. Anything I can get you to drink, do you need a blanket, or whatever that may be, and that you're safe now, and informing them that they're safe. Then, if necessary, providing some stabilization, stabilizing them so that that they don't have an immediate need, and then starting to an emergent need, and then starting to collect some information on them. Is there anything you're worried about? Is there anything you need right now? Like, do you need me to call somebody? Do you need to make sure that somebody knows this? Or, if we're not home and my babysitter has to leave soon. Whatever those immediate needs, sometimes you say, why is that important? But it may be to them. And being able to gather that information and then providing some practical assistance to them. And again, then connecting them with social support, providing just some information on coping and linking them then with some collaborative services. Those are the concepts of psychological first aid that we use on a regular approach with individuals in crisis. And we then took those 8 and took it from applying it to an individual to applying it to an organization. And this is a first aid approach. This is not a long-term strategy or anything like that. It is this idea that this is first aid for the organization and the most important part of an organization, which is its staff, and that we are always taking cues from the staff member. That's the staff members, I should say, that are impacted, that we need to be reading the room. We need to see how they're responding. Different people react in different ways. Some people need space. Some people want to be with their loved ones. Some people want to talk openly with anybody or their coworkers. Not everybody responds the same, so we need to be flexible. And that this is also a modular approach. It is a process that we can do to intervene in this short term after a critical incident has occurred. So there's 3 essential activities that are part of critical incident first aid. The first is a common meeting with staff members where we provide information. After an incident has happened, making sure that people are hearing accurate information from leadership where they are, we're providing the information that we know. And we're making sure that we don't there's not an unnecessary rumor mill or conspiracy theories that people are talking about, that we provide factual information so that people in a well thought out way, in a sensitive manner, so that we do that as a whole. That way we make sure everybody in the group has all the information that we want to make sure they have. A second thing we do is then individual contact within each partner, not doing it in a group setting, that's more like critical incident debriefing, but doing it more so on an individual basis. After we've provided that information, checking in with each of those staff members to assess their need for support and what they might view as support. You know, I may want you to bring me a snack and a certain type of drink. Somebody else may just want to be able to put their headphones on, and then that's what they need. They just need to kind of relax and listen to their music. And then a follow-up contact with group or individuals to provide additional information as we learn more and as we move forward, that it's okay, and you know, we want to stay in continuous contact with the staff. So those are the really big three activities. Now it gets much more fleshed out when we talk about the whole critical incident first aid. And this took years of thinking and months of putting it together. So no way in a short presentation I can walk you all the way through critical incident first aid. My goal for today is for you to really have this idea of of what critical incident first aid is, the basic components and where it comes from, and when it's intended to be utilized. Now, we have published a critical incident first aid guide, and the Smile of the Child does have a copy of it. They are working to translate it, I know it, into Greek, so that individuals in Greece are able to use it. And it is something that we're willing to share with others if they're interested, either directly or through the Smile of the Child. Either way is fine. And we are also working to develop a webinar that will be freely available to anybody to watch, that will walk you through the tenets of the critical incident first aid, provide much more training so that you really are walked through this, but with a colleague of mine, Brian Miller, and Karen Handgartner, so that you really understand the thought processes and the implementation of this. So that's currently being developed, and we will make the details of that available to the Smile of the Child to help disseminate to others when it is completed, which we hope will be in the next couple of months. So thank you very much for the time. Again, while you're watching this, I'm snoozing on my pillow, but I hope this information is helpful and useful, and I will be available to provide any additional assistance or response to questions that I can. And I thank you for your time, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of the conference. Again, thank you for your work in doing this with the helpline. It is critically important work that you do, and thank you for all you do to protect children.
So I hope you enjoyed the presentation by Chris. We will now move to our next keynote speaker, who is joining us live from Sweden. Professor Anna Sarkadi, MD. She's a physician specializing in social medicine, and she's professor of social medicine and public health at the Department of Public Health and Caring Sciences at Uppsala University, Sweden. Professor Sarkadi's main research concerns societal interventions to prevent child and parental mental health problems and promote well-being. She's the head of the Child Health and Parenting Research Group and the chairperson of the Swedish Association of Social Medicine. So, Professor Sarkadi, welcome. We see you very well. I hope that you hear us well.
Thank you very much. I do indeed. Do you hear me all right?
Yes, we hear you fine. Professor Sarkadi is going to talk to us about teaching recovery techniques, evolution of a group-based intervention for PTSD symptoms in refugee youth during the refugee pandemic and Ukrainian war crises in Sweden. So, Professor Sarkadi, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Is this all right for you? Do you see the presentation as you should in presentation mode?
Yes, we see you great. We see it fine.
Okay, thank you very much. So I have a longer official title down here, but I want to start the presentation by a quote coming from a child. When you talk about it, something in your heart becomes lighter. And I think if you don't remember anything else from this presentation, then that's what I would like you to take with you, that teaching recovery technique helps children to get some relief in their distress with trauma. But yes, so in 2015, I was called to work as an extra doctor at the Refugee Health Services. I didn't used to work with migrants or refugees before that. I normally work in the Universal Child Health System and do my research related to that. And I was struck by, of course, the resilience of many of these children, but also the kind of stories that came to us, and I felt very frustrated about the way we were handling their psychological distress. I thought we were really good with all the physical stuff as doctors. We learned that really quickly, and there wasn't much of that anyway. But the psychological traumas were so abundant, and I felt frustrated that we weren't doing enough about it. Now, a typical thing that you would see with children who have experienced traumas, and today we've been talking about all kinds of crises, so that trauma could be pretty much any kind of critical event that is experienced as life-threatening or just extremely threatening to the child. And of course, not all children who experience trauma will develop post-traumatic stress, and some will develop symptoms, but not the actual post-traumatic stress syndrome, which is more of a disease. But these would be the symptoms typically seen in the clinic. So you've got the flashbacks. Typical trauma symptom is when, and I'm sure many of you know this, but just it's important to know. So these intrusive thoughts of, you could be going about your daily business and suddenly right there you have this flashback and you just cannot get rid of it. It can be an image. It can also be a smell or like a sequence, like a film playing in your head. There's this arousal, that's where the kind of stress expression comes from. You've got bodily symptoms, you've got this jumpiness, you're looking above your shoulder, there can be irritability, there can be bodily pains for children. And then there's this avoidance. So anything that triggers you to think about these things, any environment, any activities you'll be avoiding. And of course, the more you avoid it, the more you will get triggered once you meet it. So this is a very bad cocktail of symptoms to have, and just like the previous speaker is mentioning, this can really affect so many parts of the life, not least school attendance and concentration and sleep for young children. And of course, as a researcher, you need to find out, okay, I think it's common as a clinician, but how common is this? So we did a consecutive study of unaccompanied refugee minors coming to the refugee clinic, and we saw that 76% of these mostly young male and mostly Afghani, but also from refugees coming from Eritrea or Ethiopia or Somalia, were experiencing symptoms. And to me, as a public health professional, this says this is a public health crisis. This is not something for child psychiatry specialists because there's just so many of them. So what are we going to do about it in the community where these children are? And it was just so striking to me that so many of these young people, a lot of young guys, were just, ashamed about their symptoms. They felt, I thought I was alone with this, and I thought I was going crazy. So I was talking to one of my colleagues who works in the UK and said, I'm so frustrated. I mean, why aren't we doing anything? And then she asked me, so have you heard about this program that's called Teaching Recovery Techniques? And I said, no, I haven't. Tell me more. And turns out that this was actually a program that was developed after the Balkan War, where there were a lot of children coming up with severe traumas. And these were psychologists specialized in trauma developing community-based interventions. So we created a Swedish version of this, Teaching Recovery Techniques. And, what is this? So like I said, it was developed by the Children in War Foundation, and they're still available, and they've been working on this teaching recovery techniques ever since, and the manual is available in so many languages, and they've been in so many places around the world, responding to both war but also natural disasters. And it's based on, it's a group intervention, and it's based on trauma-focused cognitive behavior therapy, which is the choice of treatment for post-traumatic stress syndrome, but also symptoms in children. But it's not therapy, so it's not going deep. It's more for symptom reduction. And it's between 5 and 7 sessions. It's 1 session a week. We do it in groups of 6 to 8 with young people. And the beauty of this teaching recovery techniques, and what has made it so useful in so many crises so far, is that there's no therapist qualification required. There is a training, a 3-day training, which teachers, social workers, nurses, other people, maybe helpline workers, people who have worked with youth but who don't necessarily have therapist qualifications can give this intervention, which is the whole point, right? I mean, it's a community-based kind of first response, and there are also sessions for caregivers. And rather than giving you a lot of graphs and statistics, which we obviously also have and have published, I would like to share you this film produced by Bris, the Children's Rights Society in Sweden, where a youth himself can tell you the story, because I think that's so much more compelling than any graph I could show you. So let's see if we can get this work.
هر کس به گونه مختلف به شکل مختلف از کشور خود مهاجر میشن و غربت سر خود قبول میکنن، این را پیش رو میگیرن. خب طبعا در راه، مسیر راه، به جز از اون مشکلاتی که در وطن خود داشته بودم، مشکلات خیلی زیاد هستن. مثلا من خودم از راه یونان ایتالیا آمدم که چند شب در جنگل خوابیدم، بدون کدام اتاق در خود جنگل بود، در کوه خوابیدم تا اینکه موفق شدم که از اونجا خدا بکشم بیایم طرف ایتالیا. اینا رو میگین یا همش تا اینکه چطوری موفق شدم، اینکه زیر تریلی رفتم، ساعتها زیر تریلی ماندم تا اینکه تریلی رفت داخل کشتی و کشتی رفت ایتالیا. و اینجام که ماندم چند سالی که با همون فکر، با همون چیزا بیشتر موقع که کامیون میدیدم، خب همون خاطرات دوباره در ذهنم تازه میشد، همون سختی همون. تا اینکه در یک گروپ شروع کردیم، با این گروپ که شروع کردیم و تکنیکای اینا واقعا مفید بود. تا اینکه خب گذشته ها که گذشته، خب آدم باید آینده رو فکر کنن. بعد تکنیکای را آموختن، چیزایی را به ما نشان دادن که بتانیم با هم افکار خود، با هم طرز فکری که از قدیم داشتیم، چیزایی که ما را اذیت میکنن، اونا رو بتانیم رویش کنترل داشته باشیم.
So, this is just my backup if the film didn't work. So our initial very positive results have led us on a whole journey with teaching recovery techniques, and we have developed a research program and secured a number of other fundings. But something that was very clear to me as a research leader right from the start, that we needed to partner with an organization that had the capacity and the know-how of sustainable delivery of the intervention, because we develop, we evaluate, we do new things with it, which I will tell you in a minute. But we really needed someone who could pursue this and make sure that the intervention gets to the children who need it. And that partner was Bris, and this has been an ongoing partnership for a long time now. And I'm just very pleased and I think it has worked out in the best possible way for both organizations, and we're still working together and still learning so much from each other. And just recently this article was accepted, and the funny thing with this is, and I really recommend it to you because this is a practitioner kind of paper, and we had some trouble explaining to the journal why it's important to speak to practitioners. So this is all about, how do you set out doing TRT? How do you recruit? Which professionals do you recruit? How do you train them? What are the kind of things that come up? Where do we think it will work, and where won't it work? And what have we learned, or what has the Children in War Foundation worked in the past 20 years? So I thought that was a really exciting recent development. Now I'll talk to you a bit about the further development that we've done with TRT. So the first thing we thought was to secure EU funding to test the intervention in schools, because of course children are at schools and teachers have very little or essentially no training in meeting trauma in the classrooms. And the thing is, there are a lot of traumatized children attending classrooms all through Europe. So some of the schools in Sweden have quite a lot of migrant children, and when we did screening in these classes in these segregated areas, 30 to 40% of children screened positive on having post-traumatic stress symptoms. That's a lot of children in the schools. Again, this is not for child psychiatry, we need to offer something else. So teachers got training in just generally trauma in the classroom, and then school counselors could offer teaching recovery techniques. And you never know with teachers because they are so busy and have so much to do, but actually they like this. Before, it was more that the student is tired and cannot concentrate, then just tell the student and the parents that you must make sure they sleep well at night. But now it feels like they have to be a person who's there for the student so that they can get over this, so that they can then sleep better and perform better at school. So it's a completely different understanding of what's going on for the teachers. And the kids liked it too. I mean, that wasn't a given. But so here's what a child says: I enjoyed sitting with teachers and discuss different things, opening up, solving problems together, and learning how to face our fears. Then, of course, in the middle of our beautiful school project, COVID came along, just like you were talking about all this, it's just one crisis after the other, it just never ends. So then, of course, we had to move things online. And this is where it was so wonderful to have this close relationship, trusting relationship with Bris, where we had a week to organize this. And not only did we move the training, but we also managed to do a study on how it was to move that training online. And then now we've worked to actually move the whole TRT intervention online and have published a paper on pilot testing it. And the reason I have highlighted these authors, because these are actually youth who themselves participated in TRT in the beginning and then helped us to do this transformation to the online content, and now there are co-authors. And the next step in the process is to move TRT onto an application which is completely co-designed and co-developed together with youth. They are the ones who have created this design. They are the ones who are guiding us, how to do the content, what they want. They don't want adults showing them the techniques. They want young people to do so. And just last week we finished the Ukrainian version of the guidance within the app. And unfortunately, we have had to develop a part of the app which is on gun violence to exposure to gun violence in the neighborhood, because I'm sure, as you all know, this is an increasing problem in Sweden, and it's happening in the areas that are already segregated with a number of vulnerable children. So this is the next project that we have embarked on to add that in to the app. And just for fun, and actually the Queen has been mentioned here before. She's very interested in these in children and vulnerable children and trauma. And I had the pleasure to give a talk at the 25-year jubilee of her royal fund. So this is my research group, and I just want to say a big thank you for having me, and a big thank you to our funders and partners, and I wish you the warmest luck and thank you for your work with vulnerable and traumatized children.
Thank you very much, Professor Sarkadi. You received a warm applause here in the hall. It was very interesting what you presented. Very nice to have you with us live today. So thank you very, very much. Unfortunately, the setup of our event this morning does not allow for comments or questions at the moment, but we will have the opportunity later on with those who stay with us to discuss further some of the issues. So thank you once again very, very much. And we will be happy to have you continue being online with us if you can. We will now move on to two short addresses. The first one comes from the UN. We're very honored and very glad to have the support of the Office of the Special Representative of the UN Secretary General on Violence Against Children. So we have with us, I hope, I'm looking at my colleagues to give me the okay, Mr. Pablo Espiniella. There he is, I see him. He's the Senior Special Assistant and Chief of Staff of the Office of the UN Special Representative on Violence Against Children. So Pablo, if you can hear us well, we see you well, and I'm pretty sure we'll hear you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and let me thank the organizers on behalf of the Special Representative, Dr. Najat Malanjid, who for the time difference with New York cannot be connected today, but I'm here in Europe time during this period. So I'm very happy to be here with you, with all the partners with whom we work so closely with the Smile of the Child, with Bris, and with Child Help International. So thank you very much for your invitation. And I think as Professor Sarkadi has said, I think he has said all in what he has presented, and this makes very clear that the theme of our discussions today, responding to children in crisis, holds immense relevance in today's world and for millions of children. The world, as we know, is immersed in numerous and interconnected crises with a huge impact on children, who are the ones who bear the less responsibilities for the situations we are seeing around the world, the conflict, the climate crisis, the food insecurity. So let me focus on this short address on the situation of those children fleeing this crisis, which are, among others, linked to conflicts, climate change, food insecurity, and widespread violence, as some of my predecessors have been referring to. As you know, at the end of 2022, according to UNHCR, around 40% of the world's displaced population were children, with an estimated 153,000 children being unaccompanied or separated. So imagine the immense difficulties and challenges that these children, in particular unaccompanied children, face. And the scale of child trafficking over the last years have absolutely become overwhelming as a current concern, as children account for nearly 1/3 of all identified victims, according to UNODC. So that gives us a picture of the current risk and drivers of violence for many children on the move. And I think this is why it's very important, your discussions today. The helplines, the child helplines are, and we cannot forget, an important part of building a safe, protective, and empowering environment for all children. And that should be independently of the status of the children, and including those children that are escaping from all those crises. Our office this year launched, together with UNHCR, UNICEF, IOM, and UNODC, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and OEC, an advocacy and guidance tool under the title Protecting the Rights of Children on the Move in Times of Crisis. And this was, believe, very important, seeing what we were observing after the first days of the conflict in Ukraine, but also not only related to Ukraine, but all many crises that we are seeing around the world. And in this advocacy brief, there are a few messages which are very relevant to the roles that the helplines play as well. One is the importance of paying huge priority to protection and safety for all children. And this should be a highest priority for all of us involved on those situations. And the places where children live, learn, or access to key services, and it's something that you as helplines provide, cannot be used or target to have an impact on the protection of those children. So we are seeing, in particular with increased use of online services, that's something that sometimes is put down or have some actions on, which make even more difficult for children to access to the referral mechanism that needs to have access to. So the second one is the best interest of the child, which we know it should be the primary consideration. And I think in many of your cases, children are the first entry point, the first call, the first referral moment. And I think there is a lot of information that is gathered from the situation of these children who can help actually to determine also whether the situations, as Professor Sarkadi said, the whole traumas and violence live through the journey, which are key. The third point is the issue of ensuring non-discrimination and inclusion. And that's something that sometimes the way the protection systems have been operating have been focusing on children in country and not so much on the children that they are coming from other situations, either on transit or in countries' destination. And I think this has been also very clear with the situation in Ukraine, and you have seen actions with children coming from different countries and being treated in a different way. And I think that's something that from the Office of the Special Representative we have been launching a very clear call that all children, independent of their status, of their nationality, should receive the same protection mechanism as established by the Convention on the Rights of the Child and guided by the rights and its principle. So let me focus on three main messages. Let me highlight three main messages which I think are important to even further stress the role that the helplines can and should play in these situations. The first one is child helplines that are accessible, well-resourced, and adequately functioning are needed more than ever. At every stage of the journey, a child on the move is exposed to heightened risk of violence. When faced with these challenges, children need somewhere to turn on. Child helplines can provide this safe pathway at both national and local levels, but we need to ensure they are properly resourced and that they are duly connected with the child protection and other services in the country. Sometimes there is a little bit of a disconnect between all the different elements, all the dots, and I think that's important to pay particular attention on exactly what are the roles, what are the capacities of the helplines to ensure that this protection mechanism can be activated immediately. And they might be truly accessible to all children, especially children who are marginalized and hardest to reach, able to communicate in the language of these children and being adequately trained to be exposed to the types of traumas and violence being suffered by these children, to ensure that there is no additional harm and re-victimization, as it has been said also by the other speakers. The second point is that child helplines can further enhance the expertise and capacities to better support also the work of the stronger integrated protection systems at country level. Like many other child protection actors, child helplines have to adapt to the ongoing challenges created by COVID, but as well the challenges we are seeing by those ongoing crises that we are facing right now. One way of doing that has been to strengthen the use of online means, new apps, as we have seen in the previous speaker presentation, to reach out children and to further develop ways to analyze the collection of data. As you all know, Child Help International reports have evidence how helplines have had to increase their number of online volunteers during COVID, given the rising number of children turning to digital platforms for supports. This provides an illustration of how the internet can be a source of protection for children and not only just a source of risk of harm. And this is in light of these situations that our office has launched the Protection Through Online Participation initiative in partnership with Child Help International, the ITU, the International Telecommunication Union, and a wide range of other partners, including the high-tech industry. And this initiative aims at better understanding how children use online means to access safety and protection by identifying the challenges and benefits of using the internet to support children from harms online and offline. And as you can imagine, as we are seeing, and as I was referring before, this divide before on how to support children that they are coming from those very difficult situations and already with huge traumas. The online world, when well-designed, the mechanism of protection well-prepared, and also the staff working on those helplines well-trained, can really enhance the actual protection of the children. And finally, the third point that our office has always always put the accent on is that we cannot forget that children are our best guides. Sometimes we think that we are the ones who have to give the solutions to children and to think from them. But in reality, worldwide, children are increasingly at the forefront of many initiatives of positive and sustainable social change. They are our best guidance in building a safe, inclusive, and empowering pathways to access information and support. They are the ones who are the best placed to tell us what they need and what works for them. While important efforts are undergoing to enhance consultation with children, it is clear that often those marginalized and left behind, which includes also the children on the move, are not on those radars. And I think that the support from helplines can be crucial to ensure that they are part of this process of consultation, understanding what are the challenges that they are facing and what are the solutions that they think it can work for them. So they might be, these children must be involved in the designing, in implementing and monitoring solutions, including those related to how to improve the services of child helplines. But we cannot forget that it's not simple as we explained their participation. They need to be duly protected during this process. And it's our responsibility to ensure the right to participation in a safe manner. Our office has been issuing a number of tools to provide support to other United Nations entities on how to consult with children. It's a big battle, and we are moving ahead with setting up a little bit the framework on how the consultations with children needs to be prepared, well organized in a safe environment to ensure that they can provide the information that we all need to ensure that these mechanisms are efficient. So I would like to end by thank you very much, thank my predecessors on the presentations, because they have put the accent on the challenges that children coming out from this crisis are facing. We cannot forget that all children need the same protection. This is in line with the CRC, which is the Convention of the Rights of the Child, the largest and the widest protection instrument ratified by almost all countries of the world. which doesn't make any distinction between different type of children depending on their status. So let's work united to ensure that the full protection of all children on the move is well designed, and where helplines can play an important role. Thank you very much.
Dear Pablo, thank you very, very much for your intervention. Just for time's sake, because we're running quite late and I want to respect the timeline, I won't say anything further apart from thanking you, but also noting, as my colleague pointed out, that you gave me a very nice lead way into our next presenter. You said, let's have the children be our guide. So we at Smile of a Child listen to children and have children guide us. So I would like to invite to the stand Miss Nikki Kuka, who's a YouSmile representative. So she's a representative of the European Student Volunteer Network of the Smile of the Child. Nikki, come to the floor.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Nikki. I'm 16 years old and I'm so glad to be here today. The last few years, I volunteer at the European Student Volunteer Network, YouSmile, from the Smile of the Child. I'm also a member of Children's Right team, where we have the chance to protect children's right in every way we can for at least one child. Today, I'm here to talk about which crisis I have noticed children in Greece have to deal with, and how 1056 National SOS Helpline can help those children. First of all, I would like to point out the most important problems that a child in Greece has to figure out. Problems like eating disorders, sexual abuse, bullying and cyberbullying, and domestic violence. But it's not only the important ones, but also the minor problems of our everyday life, such as phone and social media addiction and peer pressure that can make a child feel uncomfortable and need to talk to somebody. So, 1056 is a national SOS helpline operated by the Smile of the Child. It is available throughout Greece, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It is also free of charge and you can call anonymously. Many of us may say, why should I call 1056 instead of sharing my thoughts with my friends, my family, my parents? But that is exactly what makes 1056 stand out. A parent is not an expert, not unbiased, and maybe is the cause of the problem. Teachers, the same. And as for the classmates and friends, most of times are not old, mature, and ready enough to figure out the problem. And don't forget that with a friend, you can have a friendly conversation. But with a psychologist or a social worker, you can have a conversation under professional terms. Experts with whom you have no personal ties, so they wouldn't have a reason to judge you, and can talk with them about anything, from a panic attack episode to a breakup with a boyfriend. They just want to help you by providing you the correct pieces of advice, and on some emergency occasions, by knowing how to intercede with the insurance of child's mental health. Thank you for your attention. It was a great pleasure for me to be here today.
Thank you very much to Nikki, who gave a fresh air, I think, to our exchange here. Now, the next step is to watch a video presentation. It's an interview, actually, with a CHI member in Ukraine, Strada, Ukraine. They're going to talk about their response to the war and the effect on children. So we're going to watch this on the video right now.
The National Hotline for Children and Youth is the only nationwide hotline in Ukraine providing support to children, adolescents, and students anonymously and confidentially in difficult life situations. The work of the hotline is coordinated by the civil society organization Strada, Ukraine. The hotline was launched in 2013. In 2017, it received a harmonized European number 116111. Since May 2022, the hotline works 24/7. The number of calls to the hotline constantly increases. Thus, in 2022, we received almost 180,000 calls. The consultations on the hotline are provided by qualified psychologists, lawyers, social workers, and social educators. The hotline is accessible via phone, free of charge, and via online channels, such as Facebook, Telegram, Instagram, email, and Skype. The main target audience of the hotline is children. However, we also accept calls from parents and educators. For example, in 2022, we received approximately 70% calls from children, a quarter from students, and the remaining 6% from adults. Girls call more frequently than boys and comprise 2/3 of the hotline clients. Since the beginning of Russian invasion, we received a significantly increased number of calls from Ukrainian children staying abroad. In 2022, 3/4 of consultations were provided via phone and the remaining quarter via online channels. Children are actively engaged in all hotline activities and have their say in how we develop to become closer to them. For this purpose, we do periodic surveys and focus groups with children. So, what are the most common requests to our hotline? In 2022, about 2/3 of all the requests concerned psychological support, 22% informational support, and 13% legal support. The most common requests, especially during war times, include psychological health, information about children's rights, violence and cruel treatment of children, relationships in a family, aid to children affected by the war, physical health and addictions, missing and runaway children, internet safety, and bullying. What changed with the beginning of full-fledged Russian invasion in February 2022? First of all, we observed a significant increase in number of calls. Thus, in May-July 2022, we received 1.5 times more calls, and in September-December 2022, 3 times more calls compared to January 2022. Another thing is substantial increase in proportion of requests on mental health issues and requests on information about children's rights, as well as increase of requests directly connected to the effects of war, such as the issues concerning children looking for shelter, missing children, deported children, orphans or abandoned children, children without basic resources such as food or clothes. We see the same trend in 2023. Thus, in mid of 2023 compared to 2022, we can observe the bigger proportion of calls concerning mental health issues, as well as proportion of humanitarian-related requests. What changed in the work of the hotline itself since the beginning of the war? First of all, since 13th of May 2022, the hotline works 24/7 in order to accommodate the increased number of calls and provide assistance to all the children who try to reach us. Secondly, a number of consultants had to relocate abroad due to the war, and initially we faced the challenge of how to technically adjust their work so that they could receive calls from children in Ukraine. This challenge was overcome only in a few weeks, and now these consultants are able to back up their Ukrainian colleagues who stay in Ukraine and cannot work during air alarms. The hotline continues its work and continues to develop new informational campaigns, programs, and initiatives. We also established connection and close cooperation with European hotline in order to provide assistance to all Ukrainian children, including those who had to leave Ukraine due to the war.
En taxi.
Now, we offer you to watch a short video about the work of our hotline.
Och Magnus, kan du ge mig en bild också? Det är superkul.
Це булінг. Ти маєш повне право себе захищати. Тому скажи, будь ласка, чи маєш ти дорослу людину, якій довіряєш?
Ja, det står med. Roligt. Jag är gift med en grek. Vi är från Cypern. Vi ska hit, vi ska på bröllop.
Алло, я вас слухаю. Привіт. Мені потрібно з кимось поспілкуватись. Я почуваю себе дуже сумно. У мене більше немає друзів. Був лише хлопець, якого я кохала. Але він більше не відповідає мені взаємністю. І не хоче більше мене бачити.
Я дуже співчуваю тобі. Розрив стосунків – це боляче. І зараз ти можеш відчувати різні емоції щодо цього. Це нормально. Я тут, щоб розділити їх з тобою. Скажи, як я можу тебе підтримати?
Скажи, будь ласка, чому ти робиш собі боляче? А що ти відчуваєш, коли батьки кричать на тебе і ображають тебе? Давай подумаємо разом, що ти можеш зробити для того, аби виплеснути цей біль і злість в безпечний спосіб, назовні, а не на себе.
Okay. Thank you for your patience and apologies for the slight delay in the program. So now we're ready to move to the last section of this morning high-level event. We're going to have a panel discussion with three experts and high-level keynote speakers representing Sweden. So we have the child ombudswoman from Sweden with us today. Her counterpart from Greece, unfortunately, was not able to join us for a last-minute issue she had to deal with. And we also have with us the heads of IOM Greece and UNHCR Greece, with both of whom we work very closely here at the Smile of the Child. So, as I said, you have the bios in your packets for them, so I won't take up time to present more about their background. I'm going to sit now here with them, and I'm going to, let's see. Is it working? Yes? Yep. Perfect. And address one question to each, and you'll have a few minutes to share your experiences with us. So, Elizabeth Dalle, the Ombudswoman from Sweden for children. Sweden has made the Convention on the Rights of the Child law, but as we all know, it is now that the real work begins with its implementation. How can Sweden improve its implementation of the rights of the child for those children who have been able to come all the way to Sweden when being on the move? I omitted to say that this discussion is focusing mainly on children on the move. That's why it follows the video you saw from La Strada, and this is why we have these specific experts with us on the panel. So, Elizabeth, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you so much for the invitation. The Convention on the Right of the Child became Swedish national law effective of January 1st, 2020. And that was really the starting point of implementation. But we can still see that there are many many obstacles on the way of realizing the rights of all children. And one of the issues is actually that the convention is equal to other laws in Sweden. So it's not like in Norway, where actually there's a preference of the CRC towards other laws. We are very grateful actually that Sweden was interviewed by the Child Rights Committee in Geneva earlier this year in the early spring. And I think when it came to children on the move, it was very essential recommendations that Sweden actually got from the Child Rights Committee. And I think one thing is, for instance, to get the routines, to get things settled. Now, just to set the scene quickly, in 2015, Sweden received 169,000 asylum seekers on a population of around 10 million. Out of them, roughly 69,000 were children. Of them, 37,000 were unaccompanied kids. So that really has been a litmus paper of seeing the failures and some of the successes in reception in Sweden. But I think it has been so important to really realize a lost childhood does never come back. So we really need to make sure that the convention is the same for any child within inside Sweden. It doesn't matter who you are. The convention should be followed. And I think we have failed a lot. Second thing of setting the scene is with the Ukrainian children coming under the mass directive, where we can see many failures. From assessing if it's the right parent, or people volunteering, picking up kids at the border, kids who are not registered, kids who are not going to school. So I think it's been much of a learning to see that the CRC is helpful, but we need to reform the whole reception system in Sweden if we really want children to get access to the full rights. And I think here the CRC is so clear. Children on the move have exactly the same rights as all other kids.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. You're very clear, very to the point. As we were telling our colleagues from Bris yesterday when we had a bilateral meeting at SMILE, we always look to Sweden for the better examples, the best practices. That's the reputation of your country, at least here in Greece. But of course, it's understandable that the challenges and the problems and the gaps are the same in all countries. Let me now move to Gianluca Rocco, who's the head of IOM, represents IOM in Greece and also the broader region. I know that Pablo Espiniella also referred to this, the joint advocacy brief of the 5 UN agencies on protecting the rights of the children on the move in times of crisis. In this advocacy brief, the agencies present lessons learned to guide future actions. Would you like to tell us more about those lessons learned and how they can improve our response to children on the move? And of course, since we don't also have the Deputy Ombudswoman for Children in Greece, you can also speak more about the situation in our country. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Not to, for the sake of time, I will not focus as Pablo did on the helpline, but more on general remarks. The problem when you do such a document, there is a comprehensive document that brings together at least all the expertise of the United Nations. The issue that you have is that after a few weeks you put it on the shelf and you forget it. So this is the risk. For us, I think, and I'm talking about IOM, but I'm sure also UNHCR, we are using it. We are using it in Europe. We are using it also across the world, because it's really a very fresh document that looks at concrete experiences that were happening and very concrete. You have a problem with the microphone?
I think I should give you the microphone, from
okay.
my understanding. Okay.
Yeah, it's better now? Yeah. So very concrete examples from events that unfortunately were very fresh. So let me focus on few of the recommendations that we have there. One main issue is not to wait for the emergency to make reforms and prepare our systems. When the migrants or the children are coming in our countries, is already too late. You have to run and provide humanitarian assistance. You don't have time to renew your system or to adapt them. Here in Greece, we managed to learn this the hard way, because if you go back to 2015-16, situation is well represented by the picture of the child on the shores of the island. You remember, they died there. That was the situation. Now I think if you look at the system in Greece, it is very well developed. I mean, the achievements that have been done are very encouraging. So certainly, you know, we learned the hard way, but we took advantage of this lesson learned and we changed our system. The other issue, the other lesson learned is that when we talk about children, we have a lot of stereotypes. So we stereotype. We think that, okay, we have a system to deal with children in our countries. My lesson learned, personal lesson learned is think the unthinkable. Because who would think that 10,000 people a day will come into Greece and into Europe? Who would think that Ukraine will suffer what is suffering? You know? We could think that Russia could do something, but not at this extent. Stereotypes are also related to the age. Children are very small. So we have systems to deal with small children, and then we are facing, like here in Greece, 14, 15, 16, 17 years old. They have totally different needs from small children. We tend to say, but if children are coming with the family or with one parent, they are fine. They are not fine. So we should get out of all these stereotypes. You know very well how difficult it is to get into discussions about age assessment, and how complicated it is to come with the proper age assessment. And when we get into an age assessment discussion, are we thinking that when a child becomes 18, it's fine, everything is okay? It's not. So I think that the lesson learned, apart from the more concrete, where Pablo was, I think, explaining very, very well, for me, one of the main lessons learned is this one, is to get out of stereotypes and to try to look at these issues like new problems that we may think we know, but it's better if we start thinking that we don't know them very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gianluca. I'll go now to Ana Maria Clara Martin, excuse me, who represents UNHCR, with whom the Smile of the Child has an MOU and works very closely. So also from your perspective, as UNHCR, you meet a lot of children on the move, but also a lot of children who've been on the move and now live in camps and other accommodation facilities. How do you respond and support these children in camps? What have you learned from working with children in refugee camps that other actors can take with them to improve their own services?
Thank you very much, and I'm really happy to be here. I mean, one of the things that we need to recognize and to realize is that children move in different ways. Some move alone, some move with families, some move with people who say they are their families, some move with siblings, some meet people on the road and move together. So as they move differently, and they may move, some may be refugees, some may be not, and they don't even know what they are. Some children come because they have to support their families as well, and that is something that we have to keep in mind. All these kids have different needs. And like the children, camps are different as well. Camps may be transit camps, they might be camps only for asylum seekers, camps for refugees, camps where people stay a few days, a few months, years, all their lives. And one of the saddest experiences I had in my long life with UNHCR was in the camps in Algeria, where I met kids. Those were the Sahrawi kids They had been born in the camp. This was 26 years ago. I was in shock because I was a very young mother at the time, and I could compare the life of my baby with those babies. And they are still there 26 years ago. So nothing else. So in UNHCR, we don't like camps much, I must say. I mean, we understand the reasons why some countries do create camps. They might be necessary at some point, but we're always advocating for alternatives. For alternatives because the protection risks are important in camps, but also people cannot have a dignified, normal lives in camps. I mean, what kind of return to normalcy can you have when you are in some form of restrictive freedom, one way or another? So, I mean, in the interest of time, I won't talk too much about what the protection risks in the camps, we all know them, but what are we doing? I mean, the crucial thing is the identification in the camps. Identification, screening, prioritization, the referral systems that have to be immediately, so we need to train the people who register, who identify, to realize things. And as you've seen with Dr. Sarkadi, you don't need to be a trained psychologist to identify certain things. You do need a little bit of training. You need, obviously, a very simple, easy to manage best interest procedures. Greece has done something fantastic in that regard, which is the National Emergency Referral Mechanism, where immediately we realize does an unaccompanied child or a child that maybe with someone who's not their immediate family, let's look into that. Referral mechanisms for assistance and support. We need to have constant communication with the children and with the refugees, with the refugee community, in ways also that are accessible to the children. Children do have a voice, we just have to hear it, and it's very important to talk to them and to involve them in all the, in expressing their needs, in giving us ideas. What do they want? Recreation, education, sport. We need to provide safe environments. I mean, people they can trust, mentors, peer-to-peer supporters, child-friendly spaces. And they're the helplines and the complaint mechanisms, of course. We need to train the teachers. Again, Dr. Sarkadi said it all. So, and obviously we need to make the camp safe. And two last things. Coordination is a must. Children don't belong to one agency. Refugees don't belong to just one agency. Refugee children belong to everybody. If we don't coordinate our services, these children, especially if the children move, we need to make sure that we can follow them. And coordination is essential. And then let's look at the future. Gianluca, you said it. A child doesn't stop being a child because the law says it's not a child anymore. And we need to make sure that we continue caring for them. And in here again, Greece, with their new change of the law, has done something wonderful. I've interviewed kids who were so nervous about what is going to happen to me. I'm 17. I haven't been accepted as a refugee yet. I'm going to be 18, I'm going to be rejected, and I'm out of here, and then what? Now Greece has recognized that these kids who've been here, who speak Greek, who have been going to school, they can stay for 10 years. And I cannot tell you how much that has relieved the stress that these kids have. So I'll stay there.
Thank you very much. Elizabeth, yes, you want to
Yeah, I would. Yes. Does this one work or no? I'll take this one. Well, I would like to thank you both for saying that all children are the same, because according to the CRC, the child has the right of an individual assessment. And I think that's something that we have failed sometimes in Sweden, a lot of times. It needs to have the individual part and then actually to listen to the child. And I think we also miss here, and I think what we have seen in our work is that children are considered as kind of an appendix to the family. That the children might have their own reasons of asylum. But children are not interviewed alone. Yeah. And this might be an HBTQA child or a child who is the victim of violence in the family, but it's just seen as something belonging to the parents. And I think this is a big failure.
Yeah.
And then again, to listen to the child through the whole process. A lot of children tell us that we meet that we don't even know about the process. It takes a long time. 6 months is a very long time in a child's life. And they don't get information about the process, and their needs are not taken care of. We've had extensive interviews with Ukrainian children in Sweden under the mass directive. And one of the major things that the children taught us that we didn't know, and that is we have this kind of identification in Sweden. Now to get that, you have to have the personal registration number that the parents couldn't get, which meant that a lot of kids could not attend leisure activities. Young girls who went dancing or gymnastics or football or whatever, we have created a system where they simply don't fit. Third thing that we are very concerned about is children in alternative care. We are seeing many cases where children have been the victims of violence, sexual abuse, or other reasons that the children were placed in alternative care from the original family. However, and this can be going on for years. And after that, when the family has to leave Sweden, we are actually sending that child that was abused together with the original family back to the country. And again, this is something that we see a breakage of the CRC time after the other. And the routines need to be there to see the child in the process. If you go through the CRC, it's so clear that most of the articles actually affect kids on the move. But I think we have a large work to do, and I think the learnings from 2015, 2016, and from the Ukrainian children, they need now to be taken into action. And what we have seen from the Ombudsman's office is the need for safe and secure ways into Europe. Yeah. We are very concerned about the risks, about the contraband ways of kids coming over. We would like to see humanitarian visas. Because the children are at risk also on the move, coming to Sweden or Greece or wherever they're coming. And we need finally in the whole migration law to find a child rights perspective that we can see it's not there.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. I think you exceeded all the possible questions that I could pose to you. You already covered them, which is very good. I don't know if you want to add something. I want to give you the opportunity before we close.
I just think that we need to think about the adolescents. We need to think a lot. I remember always, you know, in a displaced camp in Ecuador after the earthquake, and it was being run by the military, and I was petrified. But then this corporal came to talk to me, and he said, Maria Clara, you need to help me. I'm in charge of entertainment. I can deal with the little kids. I don't know what to do for the teenagers, especially the girls. The boys I can put to play football. We don't know what to do with them. And actually the other thing is we really need to speak to them, because if I want to know what is happening in a camp or somewhere, I ask a child. They don't say much, but they know what is going on. And if you provide the right environment to talk to them, there's another great practice from Greece, which is this refugee education coordinators. And I've seen how they've helped them heal through art, through talking to them, through different ways. And that is something that we need to reproduce in other countries. But if you want to look at, I mean, listening to all these failures that you had in Sweden, that always surprises you, because, but look at how Greece has organized the national emergency mechanism and how we did it at the entry point with the Ukrainian children. The mechanism had been running for 2 years. And then we identified kids, 535, I think, kids at risk in 3 months. So it's something that it really needs to be reproduced throughout Europe and the world.
Yeah, because you trigger a few more thoughts. So I have a couple of things to say. One is an additional stereotype I forgot, but it's their culture. So a young lady, 14, get abused. Yes, but at 14 in her country, she can get married. So it's her culture. So this is the other stereotype that we have. And the other thing is, one of the lessons learned here in Greece, I think, was, you know, if we know that a child will become 18, let's not, you know, let's start thinking about this from day one.
Yeah,
let's not wait and provide different type of assistance and then at the last minute rush to know what we already know when they enter our country.
Thank you very, very much. You've covered all the questions. You've said very important points that I know all of our colleagues in the helplines will take stock of and will have the chance to discuss afterwards in the following meetings. And I think if we can sum up, one of the questions was what is the best practice or one thing you want people to retain, but I think it echoed in the words of all of you, listen to the child. I think everything all of you said had to do with that. And I think that helplines are very well placed to do that. So I think the connection is very good.
And in their language.
And in their language.
As the Belgian minister said.
Yes, yes, indeed. Thank you very much. Thank you to all three panelists. Thank you to all of you for your patience, and apologies for the delay in the program. We will now take a short break. Coffee is served on the 5th floor. I know, I have it in my mind. And later we will continue only with the on-site discussion, so people that are online will no longer be with us. And before we conclude this session, we're going to have a little surprise celebration on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of Child Helpline International. So let's see what we're going to do now. Okay, let me put the...
We're going to dance on it.
Okay, CHI, birthday. Here you are. You're celebrating how many years?
20 years of the network of Child Helpline International, and we're so proud. I'm a Child Helpline International baby. I've only been around for 6 years. There's several people here that were part of the founding of the network in total, so this is a celebration for all of us that we have here. I cannot say enough how proud I am of all the work that our members are doing on a daily basis. There is no service like Child Helplines in the world that have this direct contact with children, no threshold, it's free, that have access to these lived experiences of children. And can put that out into the world so we can make sure that policy is correct, the services that we provide are correct. So I'm very proud for 20 years. And maybe you want to say a few words also, because you were there.
Just a few words. We were there when this was happening. We were proud that we were fighting, really fighting, not just philanthropically fighting. And you know, Mrs. Dimitri, what it means. Τι σημαίνει να παλεύεις για την ουσία. Sorry, we have an ex-prosecutor for children and then High Court prosecutor who's fighting, who's still fighting for the children. So, yes, we were there. 116, 111 is a reality, working all over, and so many other aspects with the children on the move, with the fighting for every day for the lives of the children. We were so proud. You send our regards and our wishes that everybody will be okay, health-wise, and why not operational-wise. Thank you very much. As a baby, you continue with other babies to the work that we have done, older people, and there will be a continuation. Thank you very much, and you have to all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So coffee served upstairs on the 5th floor for whoever's going to stay with us. We hope you do. Video. Excuse me, I forgot. One last video, very short.
Send my love. Yes, I just checked it with him yesterday. Yes, nice. No, send him my love when you see him. He's a great man. Yeah, so committed, so dedicated. So deep, so philosophical.
Now we formally conclude. You're going upstairs to the 5th floor for the coffee. Yes. Thank you very much.
I'm doing a terrific job in many ways.